Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well and you had a good spring break. So today I'm going to be talking about body rhetoric, which is one of the readings that I feel like was the most straightforward. So hopefully we won't have to spend too much time on this. A few things as far as check-ins go. Now that we're done with spring break, things are going to start coming a little bit faster. With the next video, I'm going to start it by talking about your paper, so you might want to tune in for that. I also want to mention that you have about a week and a half before your group needs to turn in your topic ideas for your podcast. So that topic idea can be somewhat broad and I can help you narrow it down, but it's due on April 3rd by the end of the day. So I just need to hear from one of your group members, turn it in, and then I can give you some feedback from there. All right. I also want to emphasize that if you feel like you're going to be struggling with the podcast, you're not so technologically inclined, please reach out to the IT department. This is something that when they were training us, they invited us to do experimental assignments like the podcasting thing or the meme activity that you got to do last week. But they also said that they would be there for you if you needed help doing these types of things. So I can do my best to help you, but they will probably be the best person to ask about some technical things. I will say that a few of you have asked me about being able to record things on your, like from your home and then someone else is at their home so you don't have to all be together. I think Joe was asking me about this last time we met. So you can do that through Zoom, and Zoom, when you record the meetings, what happens is they record a video, but they also record an audio file. So that audio file might need to be converted so that you can then upload it to SoundCloud. But my suggestion to you with all of this is maybe do like a short test run to see if it'll work. And finally, I'll say, if for some reason you can't upload something to SoundCloud at the last minute, if you do it through Zoom and you have a video, you can upload the video to YouTube and just use the video. And you don't have to have like your faces on it. It can just be like a blank video, just anything that I'll be able to listen to. That's how I actually upload all of your class videos. So that one I know for sure will work. But yeah, I'm happy to meet with you during office hours or any time that we can set up to talk you through some of this stuff or to sort of guide you in the direction. But a lot of this stuff is going to be trial and error, which is why you're going to have that full week to be able to work on this. But I also suggest you start working on it early. All right. So the main thing is you have those outlines, you're all ready to go. And I can see that you have something going before getting into that podcast week. So we have deadlines for all of that. That stuff isn't going to be trial and error. That stuff is going to be me giving you feedback, telling you you have the right sort of stuff. The trial and error will just be figuring out how to upload things, right? So don't get too stressed out about that. I know that this is something that most of you don't know how to do, but we're all going to get through it together. All right. So I got to say that I'm doing this with my in-person class too, and I can tell that some of them are starting to get stressed out about it. But yes, it will work out and it'll be a really good product in the end. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started talking about body rhetoric. All right, so my fancy little PowerPoint here. So today what we're going to be getting into is we'll talk about how the body can be effective and sometimes more effective than the voice when communicating a message, right? So there's different stats that say this, but some people say 90%, some people say more, a little bit less, but 90% or so of the stuff that we're communicating is in our nonverbals, right? And that's a huge deal. We'll also get into how individuals as well as collective bodies can work together to create body rhetoric. And then finally, we'll talk about different types of street theater. So the most important part of you understanding what body rhetoric is that you have to understand that body rhetoric is purposeful. Right. So usually when I start things off, I ask people, what do you think about body language? Do you feel like you pay a lot of attention to it? And we have a discourse about that. But what I want to emphasize here is when we talk about body rhetoric, we are not talking about any sort of nonverbal. We're talking about very purposeful nonverbal, utilizing your body in order to make some sort of argument. And so that's what we're talking about when we use the term body rhetoric. And you can also at least use embodied argumentation as something that's a little bit interchangeable with body rhetoric. All right, hold on just a second. We're going to admit one of your classmates here. Hi, Yanin. I can't hear you yet, but I'm in the middle of the session, so I'm just going to keep going, and I'll check in with you in a few minutes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, okay, cool. There we go. So I actually started off the video, Yanin, just so you know, with a little bit about projects coming up and sort of a check-in about reminders of dates and stuff. So feel free to look back at the video after we're done, and you can check in with that. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, yeah.
Yeah. About the group project, I have some questions.
You know what? Could you actually hold on to those until after I'm done with this talking about body rhetoric?
Okay.
Only because I might have answered them already in the video, and me and you can talk one-on-one so we don't have to record it.
Okay.
Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, cool. So we just started talking about body rhetoric, and what I emphasized about this is that when we're talking about body rhetoric, we're not talking about all types of nonverbals. So we're talking about very purposeful nonverbals where you are choosing to put the argument that you're trying to make into your body. Right? So some examples of that are like choosing not to eat meat, right? So, or going on a hunger strike. So like these women, they're from a group called Pussy Riot. And when they were in, when one of them was in prison, she chose to go on a hunger strike because of the conditions in the jail. Right? And so that's the type of body rhetoric we're talking about, not just any old like hand gesture type thing. That's just nonverbal communication. That's not purposeful body rhetoric. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna move forward to something that's really important here. Hold on just a second. So we're gonna skip that. Skip this. Don't worry, you don't have to do charades. That's what we usually do in class. Unfortunately, we don't get to do that here. But where we're going to go to next is I want us to talk about the way you can use individual bodies in order to create an argument. So if you're trying to be purposeful about argumentation and body rhetoric, the first thing that you have to do is reflect on all the arguments that you believe in. So this is the time when you sort of take inventory and you're like, there's a lot of things going on in this world. What are some of the things I find to be most important? Right. So the next step, so for example, I find it important to tear down social norms in many different ways. All right. So that's something that I've reflected. And then the next step that I would have to do is I need to turn that idea of like tearing down social norms into some sort of argument. So there's a lot of different arguments that I could use, but since I'm going to use my tattoos to help support this statement, what I would say is that people shouldn't hire people because of the way that their skin looks. And that has to do with race, it has to do with tattoos, it has to do with a lot of things, right? And so that is my argument. And to add to that, I don't care if people judge me because of that, because I'm trying to work against their system. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so then the next thing I do is if I've decided I'm going to take down social norms and I believe we should be able to do whatever we want with our skin, then I am going to embody that by getting a tattoo, right? And not just a tattoo like somewhere you can't see, but tattoos on my arm so that you can really see them. And that so that I can't hide them, especially on really hot days. Believe me, I know. And then the last thing that you do with this, if you're using your individual body, is you have to refine. So tattoos are a good example for this because after getting them, after embodying them, I can't back up and say I don't want this argument anymore. So I have to constantly refine why I chose to get the tattoos. So for example, when I started to be a professor, I really had to negotiate between whether I wanted to show my tattoos or not as a professor. And part of that negotiation was the refinement of the argument. And so I sort of narrowed down my argument and said that, you know, professors should look like a lot of different people, right? And one of those looks should include tattoos. And so I used that argument to then make me feel okay about showing my tattoos in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Can you think of any other ways that people use their bodies very purposefully to make arguments?
Like the change the hairstyle. Yeah,
Yes.
and clothes style.
Yes, exactly. So all of those are great examples. Like this woman right here, right? The flapper hairstyle. They all decided to chop their hair short.
Yeah.
To fight back the expectation that women would have long, flowy hair. Right? Or like people who choose to wear big afros are not always, but sometimes being purposeful about the way that they're wearing their hair.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's move forward and let's talk about collective bodies. So that way we can get to your questions in just a sec. So the nice thing about collective bodies, and a lot of you answered this, so you answered this in different ways when I asked you which is more important, individual bodies or collective bodies, and there's no right or wrong. This is opinionated, but the nice thing about collective bodies is, as the reading says, collective bodies allow for us to create our own conditions of communication. So in other words, if we have enough people going to City Hall, having the same goal, wearing the same colors or whatever it might be, then we're forcing other people to pay attention.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So may I say that the connective bodies is many individual bodies together to be the connective bodies, right?
Exactly. And they're all working together. So it's not like individuals doing all their separate things, right? Like one person is arguing you shouldn't eat meat and the other person's arguing something over here that's completely different. It's all of these people, instead of being by themselves, they've decided to come together and create their own form of communication.
So they have to have a same purpose and same style. And that can be connective bodies, right?
Yes, so that's really important when you're trying to make change and you're bringing bodies together. You need to be very specific about the argument that everyone is supposed to share.
Okay.
Because if you're not specific, what?
I understood. Because about your question, my answer is the individual bodies is very important.
Yes.
But now I want to change my mind.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the reasons we do those questions is to just have start the flow. And then when we come to class, I mean, I know many of your classmates don't come to class, which isn't required. But when we start talking about this, then you can start thinking more about how you answered them. And you can maybe get even more firm on how you felt, or you might change your mind, and that's great. Yeah. Okay. So I like it. That's part of the learning process. Okay, so when we're talking about collective bodies, something that the article was talking about was a concept called the picture bomb. So this isn't like a big theoretical concept that takes a lot of explaining. A picture bomb is just a picture that makes people want to know more. All right, so think about it as when you see that picture, it's like an explosion and you are wanting to investigate in as many ways as possible to better understand what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, some examples of this is from the Women's March, actually in Los Angeles, where there were I think something like 800,000 people is one estimate, but one of the reasons why I think this could be a really good picture bomb is the amount of people that you see in one space.
Mm-hmm.
And can you think of any other reason why this might be a good picture bomb?
Um,
Like, is there anything about this that you're like, whoa?
Whoa. I want like this picture. I want to know what's the whiteboard write about.
Exactly. Yes, that is exactly. So that's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah, and I saw the main color of the board is the
Uh-huh.
white and the purple,
Uh-huh.
white and pink.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, even though, like, you know, I've told you that this is from the Women's March, right? So I've added a little more information, but even if you didn't know about that, the fact that there are so many people and so many people who chose to use poster boards makes
Oh.
you want to dig deeper. And so
Mm.
for me, it's at least somewhat good of a picture bomb. That makes sense?
Yes.
So you're right, right? I know you're pulling a lot of weight for everyone else, but you're right on point. Okay, so this one I should have warned you because it's a little offensive. So this one is also from the Women's March. I think this is in Washington, D.C. And this particular picture bomb, I would say, could be really positive because it's so weird, right? Like, and awkward. And I mean, you know, what are we looking at? Like, some of us might think, why would she have chosen to do this? Which, even if we're not on her side, could be a good way of getting us to explore more.
Yeah.
The negative part about this picture bomb, though, and something that you have to think about when you're bringing bodies together, if you're trying to make change in politics, is you might think about the people who you've automatically closed off from your social movement, right?
Mm.
So I'm from the Midwest in a small town, and most of the people there are not on board with feminism already. And when they see something like this, because they're so prudish, a lot of them, they sort of are like, I don't want to get on board with you because you're dressed like a body part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is for trans women who don't have this particular body part, they feel like they can't get on board with this because all of a sudden they're excluded from the conversation.
Mm.
Right. So I'm not saying not to do something like this, right? That this does get people talking. It's just be very conscious about who you might be excluding. And if you want to exclude those individuals, then keep doing it. Right. I mean, I'm obviously not about exclusion, but it's up to everyone else.
Mm.
Okay, here's another one. And I won't explain all of these because you're getting the point, but I'll go through a couple more. This is also from the Women's March. I like this picture bomb in particular because all of the red umbrellas are something that's unique. And even if you didn't know it was HIV and AIDS awareness, the color red here in the United States, especially if it's a red ribbon, and I think actually throughout the world, signifies HIV and AIDS awareness. So that's something, having that many people show up could create a picture bomb, and actually you're like, okay, that color is something that we know they're concerned about HIV and AIDS, so that can be good too.
Yeah, and their t-shirts all the black. And
Exactly. Yeah.
compare with the bright red.
Exactly. So it took a lot of planning to make sure that this is working, right?
Mm.
So this is the last one. And I've chosen this one because I think it's not a good picture bomb. And the reason why I think it's not a good picture bomb is I think it's too chaotic. So what's happening here, and I only know this because I've done research on this group. I wouldn't know this by the photo. Is these women, they're a group called Femin, they're from Europe. They're protesting a Barbie museum in, I think it's Germany or Belgium, yeah, somewhere in Europe. And there's a Barbie on the cross here. She's on fire. Obviously, this woman is topless. These people are like, what in the world is happening? There's too much here. And I think it turns off too many people. So for me, this is a bad picture bomb. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing I'll say about this, and we'll move forward, is for those of you who are trying to make some connections, especially for the paper that, again, I'll talk about next video. This picture bomb idea is very similar to the image event idea in the public sphere to the public screen reading. The primary difference between them is the image event is even more specific than the picture bomb. The image event is even more controlled because you're using the image to tell the exact story of what you're trying to do. Right? So when you're trying to build up your theoretical framework, those two things could work well together, just so you know. Okay, so the last thing that we have to talk about is we have to talk about the two types of street theater. So we have stage street theater and improvisational street theater. So usually, and Yana and I won't make you do all the work for everyone, but usually I ask, what are the strengths of each one? So instead of asking, I will reveal the strengths of each one. So stage street theater is really good when you want to present a very specific message. Right? So if you have something that you like don't want to be misunderstood, you think it's really important, then you would choose stage street theater. This example right here is from Lush Cosmetics, and what they're doing is the model here is pretending like she's an animal who's having experiments run on her by the scientists. So Lush Cosmetics is a brand that does not test on animals. So the idea here is like to see the pain that someone would go through if we were testing on them. And so they need to have it very planned out because how narrow the argument is that they're making. It's also really important that it's planned out because the woman who's involved here, if she didn't know what was going to happen, she could go through a lot of trauma, right? Yeah. So like if she would be surprised at all the things that they're doing, that would be really bad for the person involved, right? This can also be positive if you're trying to, if you want to have people who are passive watching you. So for example, if you think that the people who are going to watch you are people who like to consume media in a passive way, they watch Netflix all the time, they don't really think too much, then this is a good choice. Make sense?
Yes. So
the other option is improv. And as you can imagine, this is really just the opposite of staged. And the strength here is that you can get your audience to buy in. So in other words, when you don't have a plan, you can interact with the audience and get them involved in what you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it can be good and bad. So the good part about that is like a good persuasive technique, and I know you're into business, so you probably know this, is to make people feel like they're a part of whatever you're doing. And then they can kind of feel guilty if they don't continue to be a part of it. Right? So
like the last one is because it's they show the things in the glass, so it's no voice.
Exactly.
So the audience only can watch it but can't hear anything.
Exactly.
But this one, we can see the two men and they laughing and they talking about something and can ask the audience to join together, right?
Exactly, and the audience can even, if they're acting, the audience can start to participate. That also allows for people who are performing to adapt to the audience. So when you're doing stage street theater, if something goes wrong, like the audience doesn't like it or they're not getting it, you have to just keep going. And that can be really awkward, right?
Yeah,
But with improv, if you realize that the audience isn't getting it, you can think on your feet and you can change the tone and you can figure out what it is you need to do to meet the needs of the audience. And I think that that's a positive of improv. Does that make sense?
yes.
And I mean, the difficult thing here, though, is you have to be really good at performing to do improv because you do have to think quick on your feet. And if you don't think quick, then all that strength I just talked about doesn't work out. So if you were on the street and you were to see improv street theater or stage street theater, which one are you more likely as an audience member to stick around for? This is no right or wrong. It can be whatever you think. Any idea?
No.
So I think, so for me, I'll tell you what I think. I, as an audience member, usually prefer staged because I feel uncomfortable when someone tries to pull me into an improv. So I think it might depend. Like if I already agree with the improv, then I might be okay with that, or if I'm in a really good mood. But I typically prefer staged only because I don't want to get involved. But I think that improv, like if I was on the side of the performer, I think improv would be the best way to go. And that would be the one that, for me, would be the most effective because I can force people like me to get involved.
And I think for the improvisational street theater, this one can make the big influence in a short time.
Yes.
But the street stage theater, the only influence on small number of people, and they use the iPhone and took the picture and send on the social media and make more people know.
Yes.
So maybe the time efficient is slow for the street stage.
Yeah, so stage could maybe go viral, right? Like it has a snowball effect because if it's weird enough, right, then like what I just showed you, then maybe more people are going to want to know about it. Improv, like you're saying, is something that could make change on the ground, and it's something that's really quick. Yeah, I think that's a great observation. Cool. Well, you don't have to do this. So hopefully all of you who are listening to me and Yana have a little chat. We're able to better understand the difference between individual and collective bodies, and hopefully better form your opinion on which one you think is most important. And I also hope that you understand the differences between those two types of street theater. Yanan, before we shut off the recording, do you have any questions about any concepts that we've talked about today?
Let me say no.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, then I'm going to stop recording, and then me and you can have a little chat about group stuff.
Okay.